Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. So inshallah ta'ala, will be something brief regarding something which I was able to compile. Based upon the asl of this is going to be based upon the sermon given by the Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen alayhi rahmatullah, with some added benefits and notes from other sources. Um, So we're going to cover, inshallah ta'ala, some of the history of Masjid al-Aqsa as well as Quds, which is was considered to be the holy land or Palestine and Egypt, as well as something regarding the emergence of Ad-Dajjal, because it is all connected. All of these subject matters are connected. So from that which the Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen mentioned inside of his sermon, concerning Masjid al-Aqsa, it is in Al-Quds. Al-Quds, it is that sacred or holy land of Philistine and around this area. That it is the masjid which it sits within the holy and blessed land, which is the dwelling place of the prophets and the dwelling place of Ibrahim, the Khalil of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It is likewise the place of residence for all of his children, with the exception of Ismail. And it is the dwelling place of Ishaq ibn Ibrahim, as well as Yaqub ibn Ishaq. We know that Yaqub, he in reality is Israel. Yaqub in reality is Israel. And it's important to note this because sometimes in our frustration, sometimes in seeing what is taking place, we want to invoke the curse of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala upon those who are deserving of the curse of Allah Azza wa Jal. So one may say, may Allah Ta'ala curse Israel. It's not correct. Israel is the Prophet Yaqub, as Sheikh Salih Fawzani mentioned rather. That is not correct to curse or invoke curses upon Israel as did Yaqub. One can invoke the curses upon the Yahud. One can invoke the curse of Allah Ta'ala upon the Yahud. Now, and likewise, it was the dwelling place of Yaqub ibn Ishaq up until he made Hijrah. When he made Hijrah, where did he go? Yaqub ibn Ishaq. He made Hijrah, he left Quds, he left this area, and he went to Misr. He moved to Egypt. He migrated to Egypt. He went there because his son was there. His son Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam, he was there in Masr. And this is how Bani Israel got there. It's how Bani Israel got there. Now, because Israel, again, is who? Is Yaqub. Yaqub, he migrated, he went to Misr. This is how they got there. Now, so he migrated towards where his son was at, Yusuf alayhi salam. And he remained there to the point that they came to be neighbors of the Aqtab. The Aqtab are the Coptics. And the Coptics, these were the ancient Egyptians. These were the ancient Egyptians. Now, the Coptics, their religion was a pagan religion. They were pagans. They were pagans up until some of the Christians were there. As it is stated, that and believed that Maryam and Isa and they had came through Egypt. They came through Egypt at some point, and this is when some of the Egyptians, they started inclining towards Christianity, and after the Council of Nicaea, this is when the Christian dawah began to spread in Misr. But the ancient Egyptians, they were a pagan people who used to worship the pharaoh. They used to worship the pharaohs. They were idol worshippers, but they believed that the pharaohs were the ambassadors of the gods upon the earth, and that the pharaohs they would control the earth on behalf of the gods, so that they believed that they had some type of divinity with them. And so this was their religion. But when Yaqub he migrated towards Misr along with his son, they resided there as neighbors alongside these people. They were neighbors alongside these people. So they had migrated there around this time. And so the Pharaoh, now, And so Fir'aun, or the people, the people of Fir'aun, meaning the Aqtab, or the Coptics. Now, and those Coptics, they had gotten to a point where they had begun subjugating the children of Israel. They began subjugating them, enslaving them, and tormenting them and punishing them. Allah Ta'ala, He refers to this inside of the Quran, wherein He mentions, إِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُم مِّنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. And when we had saved you from the people of Fir'aun, we had saved you from the people of Fir'aun, who were inflicting upon you a torment, a horrible torment. يُقَاتِلُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ. And they were killing your sons and allowing your women to live. وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. And in that was a tremendous and horrible trial from your Lord. Al-Baghawi mentions in commentary upon this set of verses, in the statement of Allah Ta'ala, وَإِذْ and when we saved you, يعني, when we saved, meaning when we saved your aslaf, your forefathers. We saved your forefathers. وَأَجْدَادَكُمْ, and we saved your grandfathers and the likes of them. And mind you, speaking to the Bani Israel who were in Medina, and the children of Israel who were in Medina. And when we saved you, meaning we saved your forefathers. We saved your forefathers from the people of Fir'aun. So Allah Ta'ala, He considered this to be a minna and a favor and a blessing upon them, uh, because He had saved them. He had saved the latter children of Israel by way of saving their forefathers. Min Ali Fir'aun, from the people of Fir'aun, meaning the followers of Fir'aun and those who were upon his religion. And his religion was the Coptic religion that the people were upon at that time. Now, and Fir'aun is a title. Fir'aun is a title, it's not a person's name. So the Fir'aun that he's speaking about, that he had saved this particular set of children of Israel from, his name was Al-Walid ibn Mus'ab ibn Riyan. Al-Walid ibn Mus'ab ibn Riyan. And he was from the Coptics that were known as the Amalek Coptics. They had this title because Amalek is the plural of Imlaq, and Imlaq is a giant. It is said that these Coptics, this particular sect of the Coptics, they were huge, they were humongous, they were big people, and so they were known as Amalek. They were wiped out eventually, and we're going to see how they were wiped out. But this was that particular Pharaoh. He was from them, and he lived to be more than 400 years old. He lived more than 400 years. Allah Ta'ala mentions that they were afflicting you with a severe punishment or severe torment, meaning that these people had subjugated them, as you mentioned, and they had enslaved them. And would they would put upon them various jobs. They put upon them various jobs and various types of subjugations. At times they were doing like this. At times they were doing that. Sometimes they would make some of them into cooks and slaves. Other ones amongst them, if they were really really strong, they would make them workers, and they would make them build palaces and make them build things. These are all the various types of punishments they were inflicting upon the children of Israel. Now, and so some of them they made to be farmers, some of them they made to be builders, some of them they made to be servants, and those who were weak and didn't have much strength amongst them, then they would make them pay tax. They would make them pay tax. Wahab mentioned that they were asnaf, they were various categories with the Fara'ina, meaning the children of Israel who were enslaved. They were various types and categories in terms of the jobs which they would do. So those who were strong amongst them, as you mentioned, they made them build, and they made them carry poles which they would carve out from the mountains, to the point that their necks would become swollen, and their arms had become long and worn out, and they had lacerations upon their backs, and they would carry these poles. And others amongst them they made to carry stones. Others amongst them they made to build castles, and others amongst them they made to big bricks, and others they made to be carpenters and blacksmiths. And the weak amongst them they imposed a tax upon them, which they had to pay daily. They had to pay a daily tax. And if they had not paid the tax before the sun had set upon a given day, they would chain their hand to their necks and make them walk around like this for an entire month. And the women amongst them, they would make the women to weave cotton and the likes of this. Now, and so when he mentions وَيُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ, and they would slaughter your sons. They would slaughter your sons, and and they would let your women to live, meaning that they would leave the women alive. This is when Fir'aun, he had a dream. This particular Fir'aun that we mentioned, his name was what? Al-Walid ibn Mus'ab ibn al-Riyad. He had a dream. He had a dream. And when Allah Ta'ala mentions how they would slaughter their sons and they would let the women live, it was due to a dream that this particular Fir'aun had. And in his dream, he saw a fire that came from the direction of Beit al-Maqdis, and it surrounded Egypt in totality, and it burned every Coptic. That fire burned every Coptic, but it did not go anywhere near the children of Israel. And so this terrified him. He was afraid of this dream. So he gathered the soothsayers and the fortune tellers that were around during that time and asked them about his dream. And so they said to him that there's going to be born amongst Bani Israel. Mind you, go all the way back to the narration of the Messenger of Allah here, where he mentioned how prior to his sending, the shayateen would do what? They would go up to the heavens and they would steal information from the heavens. And they would take this information and bring it back to their partners amongst the soothsayers and the fortune tellers. And they would convey this information to them. The soothsayers, they told Fir'aun that there's going to be born amongst the children of Israel a walad, a boy. And at his hands is going to come about your destruction. And he will remove your kingdom. So Fir'aun, he commanded with the murder and the killing of every child, every boy, every male that was born amongst the children of Israel. And he would gather all of the various tribes, saying to them, not let not a woman give birth to a boy amongst you except that he's killed. And let not a woman give birth to a girl except that you leave her, meaning that she can live. And he entrusted this duty to the leaders and the heads of these tribes. And so they would do this. They would do this out of their fear of Pharaoh. And so uh, once they had killed scores of children, they killed scores and large amounts of boys. It's been said that they killed 12,000 boys. They killed 12,000 boys seeking after Musa. Wahab said, however, that it has reached me that in pursuit of Musa, they killed 90,000 children. They killed 90,000 boys. And at this point, death had begun to spread amongst the children of Israel. So the boys were being killed, and the older men were beginning to die off. And so the people of Fir'aun came to him and complained. And they said, soon we're going to have to do our own work. You're killing all the boys, and the old men are dying off. Soon all of the work that they were doing is going to be upon us. And so Fir'aun legislated that there would be a year of killing and a year of not killing. So during 1 year, they will kill all the boys. The following year, they will let the boys live. And they will alternate between years like this. And so Harun alayhi salam, the brother of Musa, was born during the year in which there was no killing. And Musa alayhi salam was born during the year in which there was killing. Well, we know how Musa survived, right? We won't have to go through that. Now, so the older of the two was Harun. Harun was born first. Harun was born first. And the following year, Musa alayhi salam was born. Now, Musa reminded them of the favor of Allah Ta'ala upon them and how he placed prophets amongst them. And he had given them things that he had not given to anyone else amongst the Alameen. And so when he reminded them of the favor of Allah Ta'ala and how Allah Ta'ala saved them from the people of Fir'aun, and we're familiar with that story, we don't have to go into detail regarding that. And so after this period in time when Allah Ta'ala saved them and Musa was reminding them of Allah's favors and blessings upon them, he reminded them, or he informed them as well, of the sacred land that Allah Ta'ala had portioned out for them. And all they had to do was go in there and take it. All they had to, and He promised them by way of what Allah Ta'ala had revealed to him, victory, that they were surely going to win. They surely going to be victorious. All they have to do is go in there, obey Allah, obey their messenger, and they're surely going to be victorious. But them being cowards, they didn't want to fight. They refused to go in there and fight. As Allah Ta'ala, He mentions that they had said to Musa, "You and your Lord, y'all two go fight. We're going to sit right here. We don't want to go fight." Now, Musa, he said to the people, "Ya qawmi, udkhul al-ard al-muqaddasa allati kataba Allah lakum." He said, "O my people, enter this sacred and holy land that Allah Ta'ala has decreed for you." So Allah Ta'ala, He decreed it for them, meaning He decreed it for this particular set of people. Why? Because they were the most deserving of it upon the earth at that time. At that point in time, they were the most deserving of the people of this land upon the earth. They were the people of Musa, and the messenger of Allah Ta'ala was amongst them, and they were the followers of him at that particular point in time. So this is why they were deserving of it. Now, as it's known, like Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih Uthaymeen, he mentioned that this land, it doesn't belong to the Yahud, nor does it belong to the Arab. Rather, it belongs to the Muslims, belong to the believers, those who are righteous, those who are righteous. Now, and at this point in time, they were the followers of the messenger that was upon the earth at that time. So this is why they were the most deserving of it. Now, and so Allah Ta'ala, He mentions concerning them. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. He says that, and we have decreed within the Zabur, we have written within the Zabur that the earth, it shall be inherited by my righteous servants. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَبَلَاغٌ لِقَوْمٍ عَابِدِينَ. Indeed, in this lies a message for a people who are worshippers of Allah Ta'ala. However, as he mentioned, in spite of the fact that Musa informed the people and he guaranteed them victory, he guaranteed them success, they wanted no part of the fighting. They wanted no part of the fighting, and they were cowardly. As Allah Ta'ala mentions that they said to him, "Fadhhab ant wa rabbuk." You and your Lord, y'all go fight. You and your Lord, y'all go fight. Inna hahuna qa'idun. Indeed, we are going to be sitting right here. We'll wait and we'll sit right here. And so, since they refused to go and they disobeyed their messenger, Allah Ta'ala, He placed a punishment upon them. And the punishment that He placed upon them was that they were to wander about in the wilderness. And this wandering about in the wilderness was a punishment that was inflicted upon them. It was during this point in time that Harun passed away and Musa passed away, during the time when Bani Israel were wandering about in the wilderness. Now, and so concerning the death of Musa, Al-Qurtubi, he mentioned in his tafsir that there is a difference of opinion regarding Musa and Harun being in the wilderness with them when they had passed away. No doubt, Bani Israel had to go out into the wilderness as a punishment for refusing the command of Musa. And it was during this stage that Musa and Harun passed away, both of them. But the scholars differ about whether or not Musa and Harun was actually amongst them in the wilderness along with them. Why is there a difference of opinion? Because this affair was a punishment for them. And them wandering and had to wander in the wilderness was a punishment for them. So why would Musa and Harun be being punished along with them? Whereas the scholars who say that they were amongst them say that although it was a punishment for Bani Israel, Allah made it easy for them, for Harun and Musa, just as He made the fire coolness upon Ibrahim, alayhi salam. And He made it to be easy and cool upon Ibrahim. Similarly, this thing that was meant to be a punishment for Bani Israel was made to be easy and smooth for Musa and Harun. Whatever the case, um, Nam, they were wandering about. They were wandering about in this desert or in this wasteland, in this barren wasteland. And this wasteland, it was said to be somewhere between Egypt and Philistine. Yani between Egypt and Philistine. Now, Allah Ta'ala, he mentions, قال ربي إني لا أملك إلا نفسي وأخي. That Musa, he said, "O my Lord, I am not responsible for anyone other than me and my brother. فافرق بيننا وبين القوم الفاسقين." So therefore separate us from these wicked people. Separate us from these wicked people. Meaning by Israel. So now Al-Qurtubi, he went on to say that Ibn Abbas, he narrated that Musa and Harun died in the wilderness. Musa and Harun died in the wilderness, or when they were wandering about. And Nam, from those who said this as well was Amr ibn Maymun al-Awdi. And he said that they were out within this wilderness. They were out in this wilderness, and they were in some of the caves. And while they were in these caves, Harun passed away. Harun passed away. Now, Harun, he was born before Musa. He also died before Musa. Harun passed away. And Musa alayhi salam buried him inside of one of these caves. And he came out to Bani Israel. When he came out to Bani Israel, they asked him, where did Harun go? So he informed them that Harun had passed away. So Bani Israel began accusing Musa of killing him. They began accusing Musa of killing his brother. So Musa alayhi salam, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala vindicated him and freed him of this slander by causing Harun to speak from the side of his grave. He spoke from the side of his grave and informed of what had occurred. It's from the mu'jizat and the miracles and the miraculous affairs of Musa alayhi salam. One difference, it's a side note, that you'll find between the mu'jizat and the miracles of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam and the miracles of the prophets that came before him. There are many differences. There are many differences, as some of the ulama mentioned. But one of the main differences is that the miracles of the prophets that came before him, all of them are gone. All of their miracles, you don't see any traces of them whatsoever. Now, whereas the miracle and the main miracle of the Prophet Muhammad was what? The Quran. It remains and is going to remain to Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now, and so this was amongst the mu'jizat and the miracles of Musa alayhi salam, how Allah Ta'ala freed him by way of that. Hassan al-Basri said that, Naam, that Musa didn't die within the wilderness. Musa himself didn't die within the wilderness. Al-Tha'alabi said that the most authentic of statements regarding Musa is that uh, that he died in a place of comfort and ease. He died in a place of comfort and ease next to Mount Tur. Naam, Allah Ta'ala took his soul. And none knows the exact place of his grave. None knows the exact place of his grave. We know that the prophets are buried where? Exactly where they die at. The prophets are buried exactly where they die at. Naam. And so none knows the exact place of his grave. For to be mentioned, a hadith that is within Sahih Muslim concerning the munaqasha and how Musa alayhi salam, he had the dispute with the angel of death. When the angel of death came to take his soul, and Musa did what? He slapped his eye out. He slapped his eye out. But yani, when the angel went back to Allah Ta'ala, and he came back to Musa, and Musa said, this is what my Lord has decreed, that I'm ready to die now, and he died in that instant. Now, once the benefits from this qissa, from this story, some of the ulama, they mention that the prophets, they get to choose when they die. The prophets get to choose when they die. They mention this narration as an evidence. Likewise, the hadith of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, and how he mentioned that Allah has given his servant a choice between the beautiful things of this dunya and what is with him, and the servant has chosen what is with Allah. All right? And Abu Bakr knew that the servant that was being mentioned in this statement of his was him. So he wept while everyone else didn't understand why Abu Bakr was weeping. At any rate, now, uh, and so the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, he said that if I, فَلَوْ كُنْتُ ثَمَّ, if I were there, if I were in this instant, in this particular place, I would show you Musa's grave on the side of the pathway. I would show you his grave on the side of the pathway, close to the Red Mountain. Now, so by way of his quote to be, he mentions that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, he knew where the grave of Musa was. However, the rest of mankind did not know. Now, and why did he know where his grave was? Because on Isra wal Mi'raj, he saw him there praying. He saw Musa there at his grave praying. Now, but Allah Ta'ala hid this affair from the rest of the people. Now, Musa at he died at 120 years of age. After Musa and Harun had passed away, though, after Musa and Harun had passed away, uh, yani Yusha alayhi salam, the Prophet of Allah, Yusha, he was the one who was responsible. At his hands, Quds was conquered, and the Holy Land was conquered at the hands of Yusha alayhi salam. When Musa and Harun passed away, they had left him in charge. The rest and the remnants of the children of Israel, and those who were newer from the children of Israel, Allah Ta'ala conquered the Holy Land at his hands, to the point that it went and it transferred from him all the way down to Dawood and Sulaiman alayhim salatu wasalam. Now, and so Dawood and Sulaiman, they had built Bayt al-Maqdis, and Yaqub rebuilt it during his time. He had it rebuilt during his time. Now, and when the children of Israel, they had disobeyed the command of their Lord, then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala caused a Persian king to take control of them and to rule over them. This king, his name was Bakhtanasar or Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar. It's been said, as Ibn Kathir, he mentions that the earth, and this was the statement of Mujahid, Ibn Kathir, he reports from Mujahid that the earth was ruled by four kings. Earth was ruled by four kings. Two of them were believers and two of them were disbelievers. Two of them believers, two of them were disbelievers. As for the two believers, the two believing kings that ruled the earth, they were Sulaiman alayhi salam and who else? Dhul Qarnayn. Sulaiman and Dhul Qarnayn. As for the two disbelievers, I gave you one. Nebuchadnezzar. Who's the other? Huh? Nimrud. Nimrod. The one that was debating with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right? Now, so Nebuchadnezzar, he took control of the Holy Land at this particular point in time, the Persian Kafir. And he destroyed their land. And he scattered the people and he enslaved them. And he destroyed Bayt al-Maqdis the first time. Now Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he returned it back to prominence. He returned Bani Israel back to prominence and strength and back to being in a position of wealth and affluence um, after they had been subjugated again, after they had been tormented and punished again. However, they forgot the favors of Allah Ta'ala upon them, and they disbelieved in Allah Azza wa Jal and rejected His messengers. As Allah Ta'ala mentions, كُلَّمَا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ بِمَا لَا تَهْوَى أَنفُسُهُم. Every time a messenger would come to them with what their souls didn't desire, فَرِيقًا كَذَّبُوا. A party amongst them, they would reject. A party amongst the messengers, they would reject. وَفَرِيقًا يَقْتُلُونَ. And a party amongst them, they would kill. A party amongst them, meaning amongst the messengers, they would kill. As this was the sunnah of the Yahud, that they would kill sometimes the messengers. Now, Allah Ta'ala mentions within his book, وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ. And they would kill the prophets without right. They would kill the prophets without right. I mean, every time a prophet is killed, of course, it is without right. They would kill the prophet without right. وَيَقْتُلُونَ الَّذِينَ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْقِسْطِ مِنَ النَّاسِ. And they would kill those amongst the people who would command with equity and uprightness. Now, to the point wherein he mentions وَمَا لَهُمْ مِن نَاصِرِينَ. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, he mentioned, O Abu Ubaidah, O Abu Ubaidah, قتلت بنو إسرائيل 43 نبيا. That the children of Israel, they killed 43 prophets in one day, in the earlier part of the day. 43 prophets in one day, in the earlier part of the day, in 1 hour. In 1 hour. And then thereafter, 112 men from the worshippers of Bani Israel, they stood up to command the good and prohibit the evil. And they killed them. And they killed all of them in the latter part of the day. So these are the ones that Allah Ta'ala mentioned in his book, and these are the ones that Allah Ta'ala revealed this verse regarding. So as a result of that, Allah Ta'ala, He caused some of the kings of the Persians and the Romans to conquer them and take over them a second time and destroyed their land again and made them to taste a horrible torment and punishment. And Baitul Aqsa or Masjid al-Aqsa, it remained in the hands of the Christians from Rome all the way up until the sending of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, or right before, rather, the sending of the Prophet Muhammad, about 300 years before he was sent. Then Allah Ta'ala, He saved His holy land after that by way of the Islamic conquest at the hands of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala, or while he was the Khalifa, rather. Allah Ta'ala, He removed it from their hands and placed it in the hands of the Muslims. And this took place 15 years after the Hijrah. 15 years after the Hijrah of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. Now, and so Masjid al-Aqsa, it came to be in the hands of the Muslims. Now, those who inherited it with due right. As Allah Ta'ala, He mentions, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Indeed, Allah Ta'ala promised those who believed amongst you and those who work righteousness, لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He is going to make them to inherit the earth. كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Just as those who were before them had inherited it. To the end of those set of verses. And this story, it is something which is well known. Ibn Kathir, he mentions it in a summarized version or summarized fashion inside of Al-Hidaayah wa Nihaya. And Abu Ja'far, he said, Ibn Jarir, meaning At-Tabari, he mentioned concerning what took place within this year, and that which was narrated or reported about Yusuf ibn Umar. And summarized version is that Abu Ubaidah, once they had finished with Damascus, they had sacked and they had conquered Damascus. Once they had sacked Damascus, he wrote to the people of Jerusalem. He wrote to the people of Jerusalem, calling them to Al-Islam, inviting them to either embrace Islam or pay the jizya, or else we're coming. If you can be Muslim, or you can pay the jizya, or you can accept battle. These are your choices. And so they refused all three of those. And so Abu Ubaidah, radiallahu anhu, he set out towards Bayt al-Maqdis. And the Muslims laid siege to it. They laid siege to it until the affairs became tight and restricted upon his people. And so they decided to seek a peace treaty. They decided to seek a peace treaty. Bishat, with a condition. And the condition is that, what? That the Amir al-Mu'mineen come and meet with us. We wanted to meet with Umar himself. And so Abu Ubaidah, he wrote to Umar. He wrote to Umar in Medina and informed him of the condition which they set. This is their condition. They're willing to give it up to us. They're going to give it to us, but this is the condition. And so Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he sought consultation from the senior most Sahaba who were around at that point in time, namely Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Uthman was of the opinion that he shouldn't go. Don't go. Don't accept this condition from them. Tell them they have to give the land up anyway, and you're not going. Why? Because this would be a means of humiliation for them. That the Khalifa doesn't even give them the time of day, basically. You're not worthy of meeting the Khalifa, right? And it would be a type of, humiliation and embarrassment for them that they sought to meet with the Khalifa, but he refused to meet with them, and they had to give their land up anyway. Ali, however, he was of the viewpoint that Umar should go. That Umar should go. Why? Because if you go, your presence, it will relieve the Muslims of having to fight further. The Muslims won't even have to fight at that point. The Khalifa goes and they give the land up smooth and easy like that. Okay, so Umar, of course, he adopted the viewpoint of Ali. So he adopted the viewpoint of Ali bin Abi Talib, and he placed Ali in charge of Medina, and he set out towards Sham. And when he reached there, he was greeted by Abu Ubaidah and Khalid ibn Walid and Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan. And from there, uh, they head towards Beit al-Maqdis. When they went to Beit al-Maqdis, Umar, he entered it from the same door that the Messenger of Allah here entered it when he made the night journey and the night ascension. He came in through the same door. It was said that Umar, as he was known concerning him in his physical description, he was very tall. He went inside and had to duck his head in order to get inside. And he went in there and he prayed. And he prayed, and in his prayer, he led the Fajr prayer there. And in his prayer, in the first rak'ah, he recited Surah Sad. In the second rak'ah, he recited Surah Al-Isra. Now, and so Masjid al-Aqsa from there remained in the hands of the Muslims all the way until the Christians conquered it from the Franks during the days of the Christian Crusades. And so they had seized it from the Muslims around this time, and this was on the 13th or the 23rd rather of Sha'ban in the year 492. In the year 492. Um, it was said that they entered with a million fighters, and they had murdered 60,000 Muslims. They murdered 60,000 Muslims, and they took control of the masjid, and they took everything out of it of value, gold, silver, and they began hanging their religious symbols inside the masjid, crosses and the likes of this, and began preaching inside the masjid the belief in the Trinity, that Allah Ta'ala is the third of three, or that Isa was the son of Allah. They began preaching this right inside the masjid. Now, and this was the Aqidah of the Christians. May Allah Ta'ala curse them and curse the Yahud. Now, and so Uthaymeen, he mentions that this, by Allah, is the greatest of fitan and the greatest of all trials and calamities, that there is a masjid for the masajid of Allah Ta'ala, and it is overrun by the disbelievers, and they begin preaching and calling to shirk and kufr inside of a masjid from the masajid of Allah Ta'ala. Especially a masjid like this, which is one of the three most sacred masajid upon the face of the earth. And so they began doing this, and it remained in their hands until Allah Ta'ala, He caused it to be seized at the hands of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Now, when he came and he was able to seize it back, and this, no doubt, it was a great conquest and it was a victory for the Muslims. When Allah Ta'ala, He returned this masjid back to the hands of the Muslims, at the hands of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Now, he was one who was Ash'ari aqidatan, and in terms of his aqidah, his aqidah was that of the Ash'ira, and he was Shafi'i in fiqh. He was Shafi'i in fiqh. His aqidah was that of the Ash'ira. Now, so this took place in the year, or in the month of Rajab, in the year 583. The year 583. Now, and so after he had seized it back, it remained in the hands of the Muslims again. It remained in the hands of the Muslims until the Christians began to put pressure on his nephew. He had a nephew. That had took over after him. Now, his name was Al-Malik. Al-Malik. And so they put pressure upon him, and he agreed to turn it back over to them. He agreed to turn it back over to them, and that the Muslims would leave, and it remained in their hands for quite some time thereafter. And it was the decree of Allah Ta'ala. And so now it remained in the hands of the Christians until it was seized from them another time. It was seized from them another time at the hands of the righteous, the Malik Salih Ayub, But this took place. It took place sometime thereafter, and it remained in the hands of Muslims again. It remained in the hands of Muslims again, all the way up until It was seized from the Muslims again another time thereafter. And this after this point in time, this is when the Yahud they utilized their support to seize it back, to seize it back. We're going to mention something, inshallah ta'ala, shortly regarding how this took place and the steps that were taken for it to end up under their control. But Shaykh Uthaymeen, he mentions how this was utilized, was done at the help of their of the Nasara, and this took place in the year 1300 396, 1396. And now this is when this judgment or this ruling was issued that the Jews they could worship inside of Al Masjid Al Aqsa now, and they continued to occupy this land all the way up until this present day. Now, and it's not going to be, as with me, he mentioned it's not going to be removed from them except by way of a true Islamic conquest. And the Islamic conquest will not take place or happen except with the help and support of Allah Ta'ala, and the help and support of Allah Azza wa Jal is not brought about except by way of obedience to Him and following Tawheed and being upon Tawheed. It's not going to be brought about by way of statements, by way of terrorism. Is not going to be brought about by way of anything other than true adherence to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. So we find the Yahud gathering there. We find the Yahud gathering there from all different parts of the earth. Then this is a sign amongst the signs of the hour. It's a sign amongst the signs of the hour. As Sheikh Salih Fawzani mentioned, that they are gathering there, awaiting a Dajjal. They're gathered there, awaiting a Dajjal. Now we know that a Dajjal, when he does emerge, that he's going to sweep across the entirety of the earth, with the exception of two places. What are they? Mecca, Medina. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, he draws attention to this subtle point. He says, what is apparent is that Medina, the Medina which the Prophet said, alayhi salam, that the Dajjal will not enter into and plagues will not enter into, it was Medina at the time when he said it. Medina at the time he said it. Because the borders of Medina have changed over the years. It's changed over the years. Now, and you have to pay attention to this point. Why? He said, look, he says this was as it was during the time of the Messenger alayhi salam, the speech of Shaykh Uthaymeen. He says, في ذلك الوقت عند خروج الدجال. He says, المدينة عند خروج الدجال قد تتسع أكثر من الآن. He says that the time when Dajjal comes out, you'll find that the Medina at that time will have expanded. It will have expanded. Why do you mention this? Because that we know from the narrations that Dajjal will not enter Medina. So when he steps across a place that we consider to be Medina, people are going to be deceived by way of that. People are going to be deceived by way of that. But this wasn't the Medina at the time of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. So when he steps into these precincts and these lands, people are going to be duped. They think, well, how was he at the Dajjal? We know the Prophet said that he can't come into Medina, right? He says that. Now, he says that the borders were expanded. The borders were expanded. He said, because the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, he used to go out to Quba. He used to go out to the region of Quba. And Quba now is considered to be part of Medina. At that time, Quba was not part of Medina. He used to go out. He would leave Medina to go to Quba. Now Quba is inside of Medina. He says so. Now, so we need to pay attention to the subtle point concerning Dajjal not being able to enter into Al Medina. Concerning Dajjal and his emergence, we know there are many narrations mentioning him and how he's going to come out and how and his description. We mentioned some of them this Friday in the khutbah here concerning Dajjal, and one of the things that will be a means of salvation from him and his fitna is knowing his descriptions, the description of his actions, his physical description, how he's going to look. We know that every prophet, as the Prophet Muhammad mentioned, alayhi salam, every prophet warned his ummah against Dajjal, even Nuh alayhi salam, even Nuh. But our Prophet alayhi salam gave us more details about him than any other prophet. Why? Because the emergence of the Dajjal is nearer to the time of Muhammad than it is to any other prophet. And so he gave us more details than any other prophet gave. He mentioned, alayhi salam, that ma bayna khalqi Adam ila qiyam as-sa'a khalqun akbar min ad-dajjal. There's not between the creation of Adam and the establishment of the hour any tribulation greater than that of Ad-Dajjal, reported by Imam Muslim. And he gave us more of a description and more of a description of the time in which he's going to be sent and his days and how his days are going to be. And he warned his ummah against them to the point that no prophet before him gave as many details as he did. He said, alayhi salatu salam, "Ala uhaddithukum hadithan an ad-Dajjal." He said, "Shall I not inform you of some speech regarding Ad-Dajjal, which no prophet before me has mentioned?" He said, "Innahu a'war," that he is one-eyed. He's one-eyed. He said he is one-eyed, and he's going to come with that which is resemblant to a garden and a fire. He says, however, that which he says is a garden, in reality it is a fire. And that which he says is fire, in reality is a garden. وَإِنِّي أُنَذِّرُكُمْ بِهِ كَمَا أُنَذِّرُ بِهِ نُوحَ قَوْمَهُ. And I warn you against him just as Nuh warned his people against him. But in spite of these warnings that came from the Prophet Muhammad alayhi we find that many people are going to be deceived by way of him. The Prophet, he warned against them, like I said, like the way that no other prophet did. Yet still, many people are going to be deceived by him. And who are the most people that are going to be deceived by him and follow him? Women. Women. To the point that he mentioned, alayhi salam, that when a Dajjal comes, a man will go to his house and have to tie his wife up, tie his mother up, tie his aunt and his daughters up, out of fear that they're going to go out and follow him. The women are the majority of the people that are going to be his followers. Now, there are many narrations mentioning that the Yahud being amongst his followers, he's going to be followed by 70,000 Jews of Asbahan having these things upon their heads. You look, some of the youth there who they wear these black things, these black uh headband type of thing with a protruding black thing upon their foreheads. These are the people that are going to be following him. Likewise, Ahl Bid'ah, as the Prophet Muhammad mentioned concerning the Khawarij, and how that every time a group amongst them emerges, they're going to be cut off. This will happen more than 30 times until the Dajjal emerges amongst them. So now, there are many narrations mentioning this. Remember Sa'di alayhi rahmatullah, he spoke at length regarding Ad-Dajjal. He has his book with the fitna of Ad-Dajjal and Ya'juj wa Ma'juj. He spoke regarding the Dajjal and the connection that he has to the Yahud being in the area of Palestine today. Because alayhi rahmatullah, he was around to see the transition. One of his students mentioned that you had this what's called the Zionist Congress. The Zionist Congress was established in 1897 by Theodore Herzl as the supreme organ of the Zionist organization and its legislative authority. In 1960, the names were changed to the World Zionist Congress and the World Zionist Organization, respectively. And the World Zionist Organization elects the officers and decides on the policies of the WZO and the Jewish Agency, including determining the allocation of funds and the likes of this. The first Zionist Congress was held in Basel, Switzerland in the year 1897. Imam Asadi was 10 years old. Asadi was 10 years old, alayhi. You had the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration. This took place in the year 1917. This was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, which at that time it was ruled by the Ottomans. This Balfour Declaration, as you mentioned, it took place in 1917. As Saadi at that time, alayhi rahmatullah, he's witnessing all of this, and he's seeing it. In this particular declaration, the original letter that was written from Balfour, the declaration, it reads that His Majesty's government viewed with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this objective. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, of the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. Again, this took place when Asadi was what? 30 years old. He was 30 years old. Now, and then there was the edict that was issued by the United Nations. That was issued by the United Nations in 1948 or 1947. At this point, wherein they had issued this edict to uh, move the Jews into Palestine and separate or divide Palestine into an area for the Jews and an area for the Palestinians. Now, at this time, the Sheikh, he was 60 years old. He was 60 years old. Now, and over these historical events, Imam Asadi alayhi rahmatullah, and he was watching all of this. He was watching all of this. Uh, now, and the the establishment of the Jewish state at this particular point in time, it happened slightly before the death of the Sheikh. And he died. The Sheikh, he died when he was 80 years old. Now, we know that Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, his viewpoint regarding Ad-Dajjal and his fitna, that was, and Asadi, he held the same viewpoint as Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and that every fitna that occurs, yani leading up to the fitna of Ad-Dajjal, is in reality a portion or a part of the fitna of Ad-Dajjal. It is setting the stage for his fitna. It is getting the people ready. It's priming them. So to the point that by the time his fitna hits, the people will have lost trust in the ulama. They won't be listening to them anymore. They'll be so desensitized to fitna, they're going to be ready and ripe, ready to accept this fitna. All of this is a byproduct of the fitna of the Dajjal. Now, we have many narrations. We'll mention just some of them concerning what will occur. And we'll conclude with this, inshallah ta'ala. Now, the Prophet, alayhi salam, he said concerning Ad-Dajjal that he is A'war, al-Ain al-Yusra, he is one-eyed. His left eye is the only eye that actually works. Um, Naam, he is Jufal al-Sha'r, he has curly hair. He has very curly hair. We're going to have along with him a paradise and a fire. Fire is actually paradise, and the paradise is actually fire. How do you put it, Imam Muslim? Naam, this narration from An-Nawas ibn Sam'an, long narration, says that the Messenger of Allah, he mentioned Ad-Dajjal, and he said that if he comes out while I am amongst you, if the Dajjal comes out while I am here, then I'm going to go to him and contend with him on your behalf. But if he comes out while I'm not here, then every person has to defend for himself. Every person has to defend for himself. And he said, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he will protect every Muslim on my behalf. He says, Ad-Dajjal, he is a young man. He is a youth. And he has curly hair. Ainahu Tafiyah. His eye is like a floating grape. Meaning the one eye that he has that's operational and functional is as if it's a floating grape in the socket. And the other eye, it has a patch of skin covering it. It's a patch of skin covering it. Now, he mentions that uh, he says that I liken him to Abdul Uzza ibn Qatan. Whoever encounters him from amongst you, let him recite upon him the opening chapter or the opening verses of Surah Al-Kahf. For indeed they're going to be a means of protection from his fitna. He's going to come out. He's going to come out of a pathway between Sham and Iraq. And he is going to go left and go right and spread out all throughout the earth. O slaves of Allah, be firm. O slaves of Allah, be firm. He says, and we said, O Messenger of Allah, how long is he going to remain within the earth? He said he's going to remain in the earth for 40 days. So when he finally comes out, he's going to come out for 40 days. He says, one day it's like a year. Another day it's like a month. Another day it's like Jumu'ah, meaning a week. And another day, or the rest of the days, are going to be like your days. So that we said, O Messenger of Allah, the day that is similar to a year, is one day's prayer going to suffice us? Or should we estimate the prayers for a whole year and pray upon that basis? He said, rather estimate it and pray upon that basis. We said, "O Messenger of Allah, how fast will he travel throughout the earth?" He said he's going to carry, he's going to go throughout the earth like a cloud being driven by the wind, and he's going to come to a people, and he's going to call them to believe in him, and they're going to believe in him, and they're going to respond to his call. Thereafter, he will give his command to the heavens, and the sky is going to send down rain. Imagine this. Imagine seeing something like this. It's a fitna. It's a great fitna. Right? He commands the sky, and the sky starts raining. Because he's going to command the earth, and the earth will start growing fruits and vegetation. And the fruits and vegetation that grow out of the earth is going to be more plentiful and more abundant than they previously had. Now, and he's going to, he said, then he's going to come to another people and call them to believe in him, and they're going to reject him, and he's going to turn away from them, and the people are going to be left destitute, having no money or no wealth within their hands. He's going to go by a land that is barren, having nothing in it. He's going to give his command to that barren wasteland, and he's going to say, "Bring me your treasures." And the treasures are going to come out of the earth and start following him like swarms of bees. And a man is going to come to him, brimming with youth, a young man, cheerful. He will strike this man down with a sword and cut him into two pieces. And he will take these two pieces, placing one on one side of the mountain and another half of the man on a different side of the mountain. And he's going to give his command. He's going to call the man. He's going to come to him running and laughing. And while he is in this state, Allah Ta'ala, he will send the Messiah. He will send Isa ibn Maryam. And Isa, he will descend by the white minaret on the eastern side of Jesus. And he's going to have upon him two white garments. And he's going to be holding on to the wings of two angels. And he will lower and then raise his head. And every time he does this, he will have water dripping from his head that look like pearls. And any kafir that sees him, any kafir that sees him, when the kafir smells the breath of Isa, the kafir will die. The disbeliever will die, and his breath will reach anything that his eye can see. And he's going to pursue Ad-Dajjal. He's going to chase him down and pursue him. And he's going to catch up with him at the gate of Lud. Ibn Athir, he mentions that the gate of Lud, it is a place in Sham. It's also been said that it is directly in Philistine, directly in Palestine. He's going to catch up with Ad-Dajjal there at this gate, and he's going to kill him there. He's going to execute him there. There's a long narration that, upon researching it, the narration it has some weakness within it. A longer narration mentioning details of how the killing will actually take place, and how when Dajjal sees him, he's going to melt like salt melts when you pour water on it. Um, and when Dajjal sees him, that Isa will say to him, "I don't have anything for you except one blow." And the Dajjal, again, when he sees Isa, he's going to start melting. Isa will catch up with him while he's in this state and strike him down. This narration, as we mentioned, has some da'f in it, has some weakness within it. Sufficient for us is this narration as it is in Sahih Muslim. Now, so he will kill the Dajjal at the Bab of Lud, the gate of Lud, which is directly in Palestine, or it is in Sham, which is the general area. And then Isa will come to a people who Allah Ta'ala had safeguarded and protected from Ad-Dajjal. He will wipe their faces, he will speak to them, and he will inform them of their levels and their various places in paradise. Now, and as you mentioned, this narration mentioning that, and this is in Sahih Muslim as well, that Ad-Dajjal is going to be followed by 70,000 Jews from Asbahan. They will have upon him these Tayalisa, these types of things that I mentioned upon their foreheads. You can find pictures of them online. They still wear these things to this day. Um, but all of this is that which will take place, and all of these fairs are connected one to another. And this is that which we had gathered and compiled. There was much more. I had to summarize it to try to fit it in between, fit it between Maghrib and Isha. Um, but we'll suffice with this, inshallah ta'ala. Allah knows best. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.